Usually, everyone in most societies is aware that it is important to look after the hungry, the thirsty, the strangers, the poor, and the sick. Many people are very sympathetic to those who are having numerous difficulties in life. Whether we like it or not, we as a society have certain preferences on who ought to be helped first. For example, our priorities line up something like helping those who are facing deadly diseases such as brain cancer, breast cancer, skin cancer first, followed by people who face physical challenges. On this order of worthy recipients of our assistance, the last one on the list are the prisoners. Yes, in a long list, the prisoners are the last ones on our list. One main reason we find it difficult to have prisoners ahead of many other groups to be cared for is based on the fact that these prisoners caused crimes on their own and hurt others. They were being accountable for their acts of making wrong choices in life. This thinking is deeply entrenched in our social consciousness. Indeed, as a society, we teach everyone from a very young age to do the right thing in all situations. We also teach our children not to hurt others. Part of this social indoctrination contains this understanding of the idea that there would be equal or just punishment for a crime committed. A consequence of this thinking on crime and punishment is the practice of tough love. That is, sometimes it is more effective to help someone by withholding forgiveness until the person who did wrong learns a lesson and commits herself from not doing the same wrong thing again. Indeed, many of us would advocate tough love by voting for political candidates who espouse tough on crimes stances. With these reasonings, it is quite easy not to keep prisoners in mind at all times. In many ways, our lives are designed to stay out of prisons. As a society, we also have built prisons in places that are hidden away from the general population. Hardly anyone would want to have a prison in their own neighborhoods. We hardly ever come across prisons. Most of us do not even know where the nearest prison is. Out of sight, out of mind, we say. How then are we to deal with today's passage where prisoners are one of the groups mentioned prominently? Of course, we can justify our lack of contact with prisoners today with all kinds of decent reasons. We can even explain how prisoners in Jesus' time are different in nature and character than today's hardened prisoners, especially the ones in high-security prisons requiring massive resources to contain these dangerous people. In many incidences, we like to assume that those prisoners of Jesus' time are far less violent and less evil than what we hear today about our criminals. That is, it would have been easier to think of prisoners of the past with a different lens. After all, there were no guns or means to inflict damage on others like the criminals of today. Also, today, there are chaplains in prisons taking care of spiritual needs of prisoners, making far less necessary for regular Christians to visit or care for them. Yet, it is important for us to think about the very notion that in the judgment scene Jesus describes is this statement, "I was in prison, and you visited me." This is one statement that cannot be owned by most Christians who are carrying on life away from crimes and criminals. We assume that those who are separated in these penal institutions have done something wrong. Our justice system insists on that point. We accept this view that our justice system works. In this way, all those who have been incarcerated became stigmatized. All prisoners, including refugees, economic migrants, and minor scofflaws, are locked away to be forgotten. They are imprisoned for breaking the law one way or another, In other words, they deserve their fate for being thrown in these jails. They are the unlucky ones who got caught. We are not debating or arguing about the justice system today. We're simply focusing on Jesus' statement. After reading it, for us the question is visiting prisoners our concern? If not, why not? Throughout history, Christians took upon themselves to visit prisoners. There are no commands in the Bible to visit them. However, today's passage influenced many Christians. They went to prisons to tend to prisoners as if they were tending to Jesus. Some went into prisons to convert prisoners. There are enough movies made by Hollywood on this subject in the 1960s and the 1970s. Hardened criminals turning their lives around was always a profitable proposition for movie makers. Mostly, many Christians went to prisons to visit prisoners to share with them Christ's love, especially those who are on death row. Somehow, extending oneself to build relationships with the prisoners was important for Christians. However, at some point, we began forgetting to visit. Christians began talking about tough love, accountability, and just punishment. In demonstrating this tough love, we seem to have stopped caring for those who have been incarcerated as human beings who ought to be loved in the same way Jesus would be loved by us. Jesus' statement does not concern itself with the guilt or innocence. It does not focus on whether the punishments rendered fit crimes committed. It pays no attention to dangers prisoners pose to others. It does not care about social conditions under which these prisoners grew up. It does not worry over the merits of each prisoner. It also does not mind itself on possibilities of rehabilitations of these people. It simply states that I was in prison and you visited me. Then they also will answer, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you? Then he will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. What does it mean for Christians who do not visit those in prisons? What does it mean for Christians today who do not visit people in prisons? What does it mean for Christians today as we have completely forgotten even to think of those in prisons? What will it mean for us if we are to say that we have delegated the responsibility of visiting prisoners to specialized chaplains? What does it mean that when we have to put so much effort for the hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick, but have not even thought of the ones in prison?